Okay. Oh, look, it's Justin's pretty face. We're okay. Okay. Where'd you go? Where'd you go away? You're here. Everybody's here. Are we all here? We're all here.
Present.
Are you here? Present and accounted for. Are you here? Am I here? Are we here? Are they here? They should be here. We're live, so it's time to start our show. And we are starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 673, recorded on Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. Science is utterly amazing. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we are going to fill your heads with alarm calls, zombies, and too many women. But first,
disclaimer. This show is for you. Not just any you, but the ideal you. And not just any ideal you, your ideal you. The you always wanted you to be, the best you. You may or may not be your ideal self right now. If you are, congratulations. If you aren't, don't worry. Chances are, if you were your ideal self right now, it would only be because you lack imagination. Whichever you happen to be at the moment. The following hour programming is designed to make it easier for you to understand the world you are in, the world you are from, and the world you are in for, with the latest programming and progress reports from This Week in Science coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Science to you, Kiki and Blair.
and a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We're back yet again to talk about all the science that we want to talk about in the time that we want to take to do it. Yeah, and you know, I believe it is World Otter Day, so you oughter be excited. We all oughter be. Sorry about that. Sometimes, you know, sometimes the plays on words, they get the better of me, but not today because it's the day of science, the day for words, the day for words to describe science and the world around us. And we have so many great stories for you tonight. I have stories about the Great Barrier Reef, the birth of Pluto, and a bit of stress. Justin, what do you have?
Zombie ants adapting to climate change, a world with too many women, olive oil origins outside of Italy, and how to live your life without regret.
I regret nothing. Je ne regrette rien. There's some sort of song about that, I think. Okay, Blair, what's in the animal corner?
Oh my goodness. I have friendship and cooperation for the birds.
I thought you were going to say otters. I was picturing otters holding hands.
You know not to trust a weasel. How many times do I have to tell you? Also, I have some unkillable insects, and I have humans. They're unique.
They are unique. We are unique.
Or
Each
are
one
we?
of us. Oh.
Yeah, which humans?
Oh, you're going to put a little spanner in the works. I see how it is. I was going to say, come on, don't all millennials think they're just their own little beautiful snowflake? Isn't that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's about? No.
Whatever comes after the millennial generation, they're going to be totally jaded. We're all the same.
My generation, it was all about you are the center of your universe, you know, that kind of hogwash. But anyway,
wait, now I just because this is always the thing that comes up when kids today, kids of every age have been.
I know.
This is how it works.
This one has the forward-facing camera, though, so you can really make yourself the center of attention. Sorry, kids.
All right. Well, let's get at it. Let's get into the science. Everyone, I would love to remind you that if you have not done so, you can subscribe to this show all over the good places that podcasts are found and web videos as well. So if you look for This Week in Science in iTunes, on Facebook, you will find us there, on YouTube as well. You can go to TWIS.org to find information about this podcast and also to be able to subscribe. There's a big orange button for Google, for iTunes, and for YouTube there to make it nice and easy for you. So it's now time for the science. Let's jump right in. Okay, the Great Barrier Reef. It's all just a bunch of bad news lately, right?
Yeah.
Seriously, I feel like now nowadays it's like, oh, the Great Barrier Reef, it is dying again, and more of it's dying, and more of it's dying, and more of it's dying, and we're not taking care of it well, and everything's dying. And that's kind of the way I feel like the news has been for quite some time. And you know what? It might be dying, and it's done it before.
Yes.
Yeah, it turns out the Great Barrier Reef is a persistent zombie. Well, not a zombie, but it rises from the dead. So maybe, well, it's not a vampire either. Anyway, dead barrier reef walking.
It's a reanimated corpse.
It is. According to new research.
Great Barrier Jesus.
New research published this week in the journal Nature Geosciences, researchers have used cores of from the last ice age to go back 30,000 years into the past, and they found that the Great Barrier Reef has died 5 times during that span of time. Yes, it has died off during time periods in which there were higher temperatures and the glaciers melted, and there was lots of water, and it was warmer water. The Great Barrier Reef died off then. It also died off when there was glaciation and the sea levels lowered and they were exposed to the air. And so there was dying then. They don't know the exact extent of the death of the barrier reef, like whether or not there were pockets of it that survived that allowed it to reseed and to grow again. But the big message here is that here's the good news: the barrier reef is a survivor.
Resilient.
It's resilient. We may kill it; it'll probably come back, but it's not quick at that resiliency. When we think about how long it would take to grow back again after whatever changes we've made to the environment become the new steady state or start reverting again, in the past, from those 5 instances of its death, it has taken a couple of 1,000 years for it to grow back.
Yeah, but that's the natural way.
Right. Maybe we could reseed it if we survive. But the point here is that it does grow back, but it takes a really long time. This is a slow growing organism.
Also, the growth depends on other stress factors. So that's part of it too, is all these different events that you mentioned. It's usually 1 or 2 stress factors as opposed to like 15 that they have right now, because we have warming waters, we have acidification, we have pollutants, we have plastic pollution, we have all these different things happening, ecotourism, sunscreen, all these things, right? So it's a lot of different factors happening. There's coral safe sunscreen out there, by the way.
You can boil it down to one factor.
But humans?
Humans. Yeah. But the amazing thing about humans, or one of the amazing, there's a few amazing things about humans. I mean, not just limit it to one amazing thing about humans, but one of the amazing things about humans is they're pretty darn resourceful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, if the world were to take seriously the changing of the environment and get to a point of working together and saying, hey, let's fund and take on projects that can actually combat global warming or terraform the world to adapt to, like Kiki, you said, a new steady state environment, we can handle it. Yeah. We could go out there. We could build coral reefs all over the place if we really set our minds to it. So I think a lot of the thing isn't so much that we're going to have to wait 500,000 years for the coral reef to come back again. I think it's more going to be along the lines of just getting the will to do it.
Right. Well, and part of that is spreading the word too. So we, we talk a lot about the Great Barrier Reef because it's one of the #1 tourist destinations in the world, right? So people, it's definitely high profile. But if you looked at the Venn diagram of people that have heard of the Great Barrier Reef and people that know that, for example, corals are animals, it's probably not a perfect circle, right? And then on top of that, people knowing that corals are endangered animals, or people knowing that national marine sanctuaries are important, just like national parks are, right?
Or so knowing it and even caring about it,
right? But so there's this kind of like, there's this dissemination of knowledge that needs to happen before humans can step in and save the day in this case. And so I think we're doing the right thing by talking about it, but I think it's also important to not act like all hope is lost, because this is what we're learning here, is that they've come back before. So we just need to have that kind of long-term idea.
And even though, we've in various years, like in 2016, some 67% of corals died along the northernmost 700 kilometers of the reef. It wasn't the entire reef. A large amount of the reef actually was still fine, but that a lot of it died off. That area will grow back. It can grow back. And if we can minimize the extent of, we've been talking a lot about this 1.5 degree Celsius temperature increase globally. If we can limit our temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, there's a lot of possibility and room for this kind of situation to be less and less, or for us, or for the corals to be resilient in the face of it.
Absolutely. But I would suggest that that if you're talking about focusing on a plan for coral regrowth, for instance, that you would be planning for it in a 4C future, a 4C degree rise above pre-industrial, because we may still get there regardless of what we do. I mean, there is that
plan for all contingencies.
You plan for the biggest one that you think you could, run into first. Yeah. And then if it's not that bad, then okay, well, at least we were well prepared. But I've seen techniques. There was some it's called the seahorse. It's this ridiculous house that they built to sit out in one of those off of one of the fake islands in Dubai, that the bottom floor is underwater and super high maintenance, but it's, you can see fish going by. But they created a whole coral reef thing underneath there, and they grew it, and they used a combination of probiotics and electric grid to get the thing growing and starting quicker. And so, the technology already exists to do these things that we and some of it is being employed. It was a couple years ago. I need to go refine this story, but I were talking about all the different projects that are going on across the United States and some around the world, where they're actually planning for the 4C future, where they're creating tributaries, man-made tributaries for fish to get around when certain streams and rivers dry up in Montana, and things like this, where there are activities where people are like, this is a really important part of our state or feature of our economy that we want to preserve beyond.
How do we sustain it after these glacier-fed streams or these snowpacks-fed streams don't exist anymore?
Right, including the Department of Forestry, when they're reseeding a forest that might have been burnt down or something like that. They're actually planting not always the same trees that were there before, but the ones that they predict are going to last better or survive better in that warmer
in the new climate,
or moving them to a higher altitude, or
Yeah. So moving on to things that we are doing technologically, not in the environment, but for our own personal health. A lot of people, many people, I mean, myself included, I have often wondered if my child would blind me by scratching my cornea.
Oh
one of
no.
these days. You know, growing these children, these little flailing hands and razor sharp fingernails. You gotta wonder. But the cornea is the outermost part of your eye, and it is very important for focusing in vision. Uh, and is prone to injury very often. And so you can get a corneal transplant. However, there are not enough corneas to go around. And so people have been wondering how we could potentially create corneas for these corneal transplants. Researchers published a proof of concept study this week in Experimental Eye Research, reporting how they were able to mix human stem cells, human corneal stromal cells, they're a specific type of stem cell, from a healthy donor. And they mixed them together with alginate, which is from seaweed, right? A thickener, and collagen, which is a human connective tissue, to create a solution that they were able to print as a bioink in a low-cost 3D bioprinter.
What?
The bioink, they extruded it in concentric circles in the shape of a human cornea, took less than 10 minutes to print, and they have been showing that this is potentially well received as well. This is definitely just proof of concept, so it's still a couple of years away from getting out into the field and being something that could be transplanted into a human eye or be something that would be available. This is the kind of thing where you could take your own stem cells from a damaged cornea. If it's only injured, you could take corneal your own even stromal cells, and extrude them in this batch to regrow, to create, or to print a cornea to be transplanted back in your own eye, which would get rid of any rejection issues in this place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm a contact lens wearer, and one of the horror stories they tell you when you start wearing them is to never fall asleep with your contacts in. Because if you do, your eyes dry out, your contacts can stick to your corneas. And I've always wondered if this is real or not. But I've had multiple optometrists say, I had to scalpel off a dried contact lens off of someone's eyeball, and they lost part of their cornea.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell that story.
But
I'd be like, everything worked out, but a less deft hand, and it could have damaged their cornea.
Yeah. But now I can sleep in my contacts because I can just have a new cornea printed.
That's right. In a couple of years. Maybe you'll have your own cornea.
I think you're underestimating this.
Actually, what I was thinking is, I was wondering if I could have extra cornea printed to make my eye the right shape, so I wouldn't need contacts anymore.
And that is something that maybe would be a direction that could be investigated in the future, because what they're able to do currently is scan the patient's eye to be able to exactly match the printed cornea to the eye of the patient. So there's the size and the shape that are important, and the potential is there potentially there we go, I'm speaking clearly, to improve people's vision by making slight improvements to that size and shape.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's really exciting. I've been waiting for this 3D printing thing to really take off in the medical field. It's been edging closer and closer to being a full-blown thing. I'm so excited. Especially after that 3D printer that we saw in Philadelphia. That 3D cells.
Uses cells. So this is the same thing. It's a bioprinter, can print the cells, uses cells in a gel matrix to put together the cornea. So the question is, do these corneas, they really have to find out, do these printed corneas work? And that's the real next step. This is proof of concept. They can gather the cells, they can put them into the solution, they can print them into any, size and shape cornea you need. The next steps are going to be, how do they actually work in the eye? How do transplant patients accept them? Do the eyes accept them? Do they work great? Or are there other issues that are of concern? So there's still some time ahead before this becomes, I'm going to go to my corner bioprinter and just print up a new cornea. My optometrist, they're going to scan my eye and just do this for me over the matter of weeks. Yeah, no, it'll be a while, but this is cool.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And then my final intro story is about Pluto, the not a planet, and where it came from. Even though it is not a planet anymore, it did come from somewhere. Where did it come from? Has it always been the icy ball that we have seen thanks to those pictures from New Horizons? Well, according to some new research out of the Southwest Research Institute, scientists were able to take NASA's New Horizons data and also data from the European Space Agency's Rosetta mission to be able to come up with a new hypothesis about how Pluto formed in the outer solar system. According to Dr. Christopher Glein of the Southwest Research Institute Space Science and Engineering Division, they've come up with what they call the giant comet CosmoChemical model of Pluto formation. The giant comet. And the reason they call it the giant comet CosmoChemical model is because, number one, they're using chemistry to try and figure out what put Pluto together. Number two, using chemistry and the balance of nitrogen and carbon and other volatile elements that are on the surface of Pluto and also in its atmosphere, they've come up with the idea that there were some, 1 billion comets or so in the outer Kuiper belt that just glommed together, stuck together. 1 billion comets ran into each other and made Pluto. That's what they think happened.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is published online in Icarus. And what they say is they found an intriguing consistency between the estimated amount of nitrogen inside the glacier at Sputnik Planitia and the amount that would be expected if Pluto was formed by and the agglomeration of about 1 billion comets or other Kuiper belt objects that are similar in chemical composition to Rosetta, the comet 67P Garamov-Cheremenko that the Rosetta mission looked at. And in doing that, it matches an idea that Pluto was formed by a bunch of icy objects in the outer solar system instead of being formed by solar influences and stuff that came in from closer to the sun. Yeah. Pluto's just a big ice cube. And it's like that ice cube in the back of the freezer that forms from all the ice cubes that you don't use that stick together.
And you get really desperate and you put it in your mixed drink and then you're like, why does this mixed drink taste like beef?
And that's right. And then your mixed
Oh,
drink
oh my God.
Yeah. And
Yep.
freezer burn.
That's Pluto in a nutshell.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting using chemistry because they're just having to look at chemical elements to try and come up with these ideas. So chemistry is telling us about the formation of planets, not planets, like Pluto in the outer solar system. This is This Week in Science. Hey, Justin, what you got?
I've got one of the more unexpected adapters to climate change. Zombies. Not of the Walking Dead variety, but rather the biting dead. Zombie ants. Just which are just regular carpenter ants who have fallen victim to very specific forms of parasitic fungal infections. Yes. The zombie fungal spores fall onto the ants. The fungus then multiplies within the ant, feeding on it. Eventually, the fungus somehow manipulates the ant's behavior, influencing it to go climb a tree or a shrub. And once it gets high enough, The ant is compelled to clamp onto a leaf by biting, and it never lets go again. The fungus grows a little mushroom shoot out the back of the ant's head and soon rains spores down upon any uninfected, unsuspecting future victim ants below. So the positioning of these ant bodies on high, where the spores can be more widely distributed, is essential for the fungal survival.
God, insult to injury. Not bad enough they break open their head case and stick out a mushroom. They have to send them up into the sky first and make them clamp down.
That's right.
Now, so the picture that we've got up is of an ant biting a leaf, which is very common. Now, some of them, and what's interesting, it's about half the species of carpenter ants have can fall victim to this fungi, but there's specific fungi that go with these specific carpenter ants. So it's kind of a diversified thing. A lot of them actually don't bite leaves, but will bite twigs, bark, that sort of thing. Some will even wrap their legs around a twig as opposed to going after the leaves. And it depends on where they are. So in tropical areas where the green leaves stay green all year long, they bite the leaves. In temperate areas where trees and bushes have a tendency to lose their leaves, they ignore the leaves and go for branches or twigs or bark. So at first sight, this might just seem like, well, that's, it's a twig, it's a leaf. But this is a strategy for adapting to climate change. So these zombie ants and zombie fungi parasite are found everywhere pretty much except for Europe. Although we have fossils of zombie ants that were found in Germany. But they were there at a time when 47 million years ago, this fossil is from, until you got to like the North and South Pole, everything was evergreen, right? It was a nice, warm, tropical planet at the time. And all of the ants were biting leaves because that's what was everywhere. So then they figure, they're guessing right now, somewhere around 20 million years ago, there was convergent evolution as temperate forests started to move down. So they don't really have, of course, the mechanism for this. This was in the current issue of Evolution, their report. But it is pretty fascinating to think that this is a parasite that is evolving a strategy or a natural selection that's taking place. But it's one of those things when you look at an arms race type of a thing. And it's always even a little bit weirder when you delve into a parasite that's like a, and it's a microbial parasite. It's a fungus that seems to have got this adaptation because it is controlling this other more complex life form's behavior to fulfill an action, and it's differentiating it based on the climate and the kind of trees that are available and whether or not those leaves are going to fall to the ground. Because if you bite the leaf and it falls to the ground, there goes that whole strategy, right? Of flinging your spores everywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can see how that would create selective pressure very quickly, right? So if they're biting onto leaves that fall and those spores don't go anywhere, and there's a couple ants that bite onto the twigs and those spores do go everywhere, it doesn't take long for the population to adapt.
Right. But it's such an interesting thing though, because it's also such a specific, there may be some sort of stochastic, whether this fungi is, occasionally it accidentally, has one that's biting twigs and they just don't get noticed as much. That this is possible, but it's just so, where they have leaves and the leaves will stay green, that's what they do. And that's all we see. We don't see like a variation. We don't see like, oh, there's a whole bunch over here that bite twigs, even though they have leaves available. Very interesting, but it's so far we're gonna have zombie ants, penguins, and a coral reef will survive global warming. So we're getting together.
Why penguins?
Because they've survived through. It's a really old species, as we were talking about the other day, and they'll be fine. They've survived climate changes before. They'll do just fine.
Penguins are having a rough go, but
they'll be fine.
And so will the barrier reef. There's a lot that's going to be just fine.
Come back.
I would not have picked penguins. That is an odd one.
The cockroaches.
Penguins are going to love the future. They won't have to swim as far for food.
That's not true. The currents are moving.
They change climate themselves all the time. And
cold water has fish, so warmer water has less fish.
But you guys, so you're saying
is if cats show up in Antarctica.
No,
that's
you're
what's
saying
ruin it for
penguins. Justin's saying penguins generally. So yes, maybe
in Antarctica.
As a genus, penguins will probably be fine, but particular species will go extinct. While there is adaptation, and there may be, if there's time, there will be new species, or some perhaps that exist will be fine with their adaptations and will succeed. So
maybe what I'm
saying. Blair, you are correct. And Justin, I think you might be correct too.
I got lucky.
You did.
I just
tell me another story.
The good old days. Once upon a time, in a land not too far away, there was only one man available for every 17 women. Or so it would appear by looking at the genetic diversity, specifically diversity of Y chromosomes starting around 7,000 years ago. It hadn't always been this way, but something happened that caused a chromosomal collapse amongst men. Anthropologists, biologists have been professionally perplexed by this event in genetic history. What could have caused it? Where did all the men go? Why did it seem like one man was having all of the children? And so many.
His name was Genghis Khan. No.
Stanford researchers now believe they've found an explanation. The collapse, they are arguing, was the result of generations of war between patrilineal clans whose membership was solely based on male ancestry. This is the so-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so, and if you can trace your way back. But the women weren't really part of that. So if you were woman of the hill people, you could decide to go live with the valley people. No big deal. But if you were a man of the hill people, you were a man of the hill people, and you stayed in the hills because you are of the hill people. And that's sort of how they think this went. So there's been a lot of there's all sorts of debate about how this went, actually. So this is coughing on the air. Hang on.
Well, Justin clears his throat.
Tianchen Zhang, a Stanford University undergraduate student in sociology, had a theory, and he told it to his buddy, who's actually a high school buddy. They both went to Stanford. His buddy was Alan Ah, who was studying mathematical and computational sciences, and they were trying to look for a way to prove his theory that it was through this warfare, that men just sort of deselected themselves by having these paternal lineal clans. And they went to Marcus Feldman, professor of biology in Stanford School of Humanities and Sciences, and they started looking at it, putting it to computers, running other simulators, and it looked pretty good. The one thing that could really well describe the Y chromosome bottleneck was if groups of men, whole groups, whole clans got wiped out, because then there's a whole Y chromosome that's gone. If the communities weren't sort of based on who descended from that one father and all the men stayed together as a group, then it didn't really affect the Y chromosome so much in those groups, because it's like, my grandfather was, it's like the Civil War, brother fought brother, right? Everything's sort of dispersed. Women were not affected by this. So the mothers passing down their genes to mothers was over and over again. Also, what would also exacerbate this would be the fact that one clan of Y chromosomes got wiped out, and now the remaining Y chromosome clan that wiped them out is more dominant. And so, again, you have less diversity because that one continues on to become more and more dominant. So from thousands of years of men fighting over things and killing all the other men over and over again, we a little bit of a chromosomal bottleneck.
A little bit of a chromosomal bottleneck, but not what they were. It was just the kind of the math of it.
Yeah, it's a few lineages underwent dramatic expansions consistent with coming out on top of these battles, whereas a lot of others sort of disappeared. So it was just less. Not that there was necessarily less men, one man to every 17 women, but there was less Y chromosomal diversity that took place because of these battles.
So because the men were related, the chromosomes were overrepresented. Yeah.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, and the women, because they could move around and go everywhere, their genes were getting all mixed up in the populations, whereas men were like, our whole family is going off to fight in this battle. Arr. And then they'd all die.
A rare benefit of being female in evolutionary history. How interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure it was great. So,
yeah, I don't know if it's a benefit, to be fair.
But I like that. This is Professor Feldman. I like his words at the end. Says the work was an unusual example of undergraduates driving research that was broad, both in terms of academic disciplines that were spanned, in this case, sociology, mathematics, and biology, and in terms of the potential implications for understanding the role of culture in shaping human evolution. Adding, working with these talented guys is a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I wonder how this kind of investigation can go into there have been papers recently in the last 10 years talking about the disappearing Y chromosome. And well, I mean, it's a different situation where they're talking about the Y chromosome actually disappearing in men, but I wonder if there's something.
We're losing our Y chromosomes? Did we just forget where we put them?
I got to go back to the drawing board and look for these.
I don't know where I put mine. If you told me, like, show me your Y chromosome,
there's a story. I'll look for it. We can talk about it later, maybe in the after show or something. But yeah, there's a controversy about the disappearing male Y chromosome.
A controversy?
A controversy. Oh. No, it's a controversy.
Oh. All right. You're gonna have to have that at least by the after show, because I got to figure out what the heck you're talking about.
I'm gonna have to look that up quickly.
But you know what time it is now?
That's what I was just going to start us talking about. What time is it?
It's time for
Blair's Animal Corner
with Blair.
Loves are creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
I have two amazing stories about birds from a listener by the name of Dr. Kiki. Oh, wait, that's you.
Oh, wait, did I send you a story?
You sent me two amazing stories. I'm so excited. So this first story, all about birds, is from University of Chicago and University of Nebraska. They showed that two different species of birds, two different types of Australian fairy wrens, not only recognize individuals from the other species, but also form long-term partnerships across species. This is crazy.
It is crazy.
They realized from surveys out in the wild that these two different species of fairy wrens were sharing territories with specific individuals and responding aggressively to unknown individuals. So they saw something weird happening here. They are variegated fairy wrens and splendid fairy wrens. They both live in Australia. And the males of each species have really bright blue feathers that make them very popular bird watching species, which is why there's this long history of watching them, of noticing that they overlap habitat. So they're constantly interacting with each other. They forage near each other. They travel in groups. They seem to be aware of one another, but there hasn't really been much science on what's actually happening, if they're just around each other by accident or if they have some sort of partnership. They also defend their territory from rivals of both species. The variegated fairy wrens will defend their shared territory from both the variegated and splendid fairy wrens. And splendid fairy wrens also, they defend their territory from both species. But in this research, in 3 years, from 2012 to 2015, they wanted to see actually how this recognition was occurring. So they studied species at the Brookfield Conservation Park in South Australia. And the very first observation that kind of sparked all this was that when they played a recorded vocalization of one species, the other species responded. So if you think about a forest, there's dozens of bird songs going on at any one time. So for different species to respond to a particular call would be pretty weird if they're not predatory. So this kind of sparked this whole idea of the research. They monitored both fairy wren species in the darkness right before dawn, and they captured clear recordings of individuals of both species. After sunrise, they would broadcast those recorded songs from a speaker about 30 meters away from a subject to simulate what they would consider an intrusion into a territory. And what they found was that they had these different calls. They had a fairy wren that occupied the same territory, a fairy wren from an adjacent territory, and a fairy wren from an area very far away, 5 or more territories away. So a completely unknown bird, a stranger. And then for a control, they used a robin call, a red-capped robin call. So something that's common in their space that is not either of these species. They found that both types of fairy wrens were able to recognize co-residents, individual wrens that hung out in their specific territory. And they responded aggressively to songs of neighbors and unknown birds of both species. So they heard these friendly bird songs. They didn't care. They heard these calls of neighbors, of rivals, and of strangers, and they reacted aggressively. So these birds can definitely tell each other by their song across species barriers, which is pretty insane.
So, they're both fairy wrens.
So yes, but they're different species.
But they're...
So bird calls, think about it. Bird calls usually are, this isn't a warning call, okay? These are bird calls that are used to woo a female.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not something that, if I am a variegated fairy wren, I am not looking to woo the other species because that would do me no good. Right. A splendid fairy wren cannot make me babies. So we didn't expect that the neural pathways, we could call it, would exist to differentiate calls of a completely different species when those calls have been historically used in sexual selection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that not just it's in the environment and it's there, you hear the noise, but actually knowing who it is. Mm-hmm. And responding to
that's Frank from next door.
Yeah, and taking the time and energy to respond to it. I mean, that's what's really surprising about this is that, yeah, you have these neighbors who are like, I know who you are. Mm-hmm. You be quiet now. This is my territory. You stay on your territory.
Right.
And you keep your breeding to yourself over there in your yard.
Yeah. Well, it's, I was thinking about too, it's kind of like if you had a front yard and Bodie, the golden retriever from next door, occasionally broke in and his owners will be over in a minute. It's not a big deal, right? As opposed to, that's a German Shepherd I have never seen before. Why is it in my yard? Right? So it's across the species barriers. You're recognizing friendly individuals from non-friendly individuals that are completely different species. This is I can't say I'm entirely surprised based on what we know about bird brains and about their extreme sensitivity to vocal cues, but this is the first time we've measured this, and that's really fascinating.
And it being the first time, I bet if they go digging, they're going to find many more instances of this kind of awareness.
Yeah.
Behavior. Yeah.
Which perfectly bridges to the second bird story that you sent me. It's from SF State University, San Francisco State University. Also, different species of birds recognize each other and working together. This is from the mixed species flocks found in southeastern Peru. There are these flocks of birds that can be many, many different species living together in the mid-level of the rainforest. This is an area of the rainforest that is usually considered to be pretty dangerous compared to other levels. So it's kind of where all the different potential predators overlap. So the super high level predators can dip down to the middle. The lower level predators can jump up to the middle. So this middle area, it has a lot of the best food, a lot of the best fruits, but it also has some of the most dangerous opportunities to be eaten. And so this study was particularly looking at one species found in these groups in the rainforest, and that's an ant shrike. And so ant shrikes, Thamnomanes ardesiacus, they are known for their alarm calls. And so in this study, they took flocks and they adjusted the presence of these individual ant shrikes. So when they,
go
ahead.
I keep hearing ant shark.
Ant shrike.
Shrike.
It's a type of bird.
Okay.
So they
name it as it's not like a.
Yes,
like
it's just, birds have really weird names, right? You know about this. There's brown creepers. There's crowned things. There's all sorts of funny names. Crowned. Yes, blue-footed boobies. Yes, killdeers. That's one of my favorite. Killdeer. So there's lots of different weird names for birds. This is called an ant shrike. And so what they did in this study in Peru is they captured some of these birds from 8 different mixed species flocks in Peru, kept each bird in an aviary for several days. When they removed the ant shrikes, birds in each flock responded differently. In 3 flocks, the birds retreated to areas of denser cover. In another, the members joined new flocks. And so when they removed these birds that are known for their alarm calls, the rest of the birds in those flocks of different species either left the mid-level of the rainforest or looked for a new flock. But the birds in the control flocks, where they captured them and then immediately released them again, they were chill. They stayed out in the open. They continued their job. They trusted that bird to do their job, doing their alarm calls.
So it's not just the alarm call. The ant shrike is also is like very observant, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It must be the one like paying the most attention to what's going on and always on the watch.
Absolutely. So they are calling out for their own species, but then all these other species are noticing it and depending on it, which is why the researchers here suggest that perhaps this is a new form or something similar to a keystone species. Because this animal, we talk about it with beavers or wolves where they're physically altering a habitat. This animal is altering the danger factor of a space. So they're not physically changing the space, but they are changing the risk, the inherent risk in a location. So they might actually be a completely new kind of keystone species because their alarm calls allow all different species to come and forage safely.
They allow it. I mean, you can say that they allow them to come and forage safely, but it's more of these other species taking advantage of a species that is, like Justin said, observant and loud at doing these really loud.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, it's taking advantage of having that nosy neighbor and, you know, things in your
Absolutely.
environment that you can take advantage of. And if, you know, maybe if that nosy neighbor isn't around going, I saw somebody on people's porches, you know, the other morning, you know, if there's nobody saying that in the neighborhood, maybe you stay in your house a bit more or you leave the neighborhood.
Right.
There's got to be some group advantage, right? There's sort of like a herd sort of taking place. Where now, if there does happen to be a predator, it's less likely that they'll get you.
But I think the whole group advantage, there is a lot of work into the evolutionary advantage of groups. And so the social advantage, we have mixed flocks of all kinds. So around here on the West Coast of the United States, we see bush tits and chickadees often flying together in flocks. There are often groups of finches and sparrows that tend to kind of they forage and they feed together. And so it makes these smaller groups of birds larger, which is also protective of the individuals. You know, you're less likely to get picked off. But then there's also the group advantage of somebody's maybe paying attention.
Right.
And so
absolutely, yeah.
In this case, we're actually seeing it is one particular species that has a very definite behavioral response for paying attention.
And I would be interested to see for this situation, kind of to take this study to the next level, would be if this bird would make an alarm call if it was only around individuals of different species, or if it only makes the alarm call when it's near other ant shrikes. Because are they doing this intentionally? Are they themselves taking advantage of the flock in some way and therefore providing this to the flock as kind of like a push-pull? Or are these other birds just hopping on these coattails because they're already calling for their own?
And I would want to see if they could recognize one of these ant shrikes out of you know, across drastically different species. To see, like, you know, last time I was around this ant shrike, a couple birds got eaten. I don't know. I'm gonna go find another ant shrike lifeguard on duty.
I don't like this neighborhood watch. I don't like it.
I've heard this song before, and it came in really late. Like there were like 3 birds getting eaten before that one noticed anything.
Yeah. So actually, a combination of the 2 studies we just talked about, right? So seeing if the recognition plays across species lines and across these different studies. Yeah, that'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, I wonder. The big question, like you said, is like, what is the ant shrike social population behavior like? So, I mean, are they like jays or other corvids like crows, where they have a large group, and are they very highly related within that group? Is it, you know, what kind of a breeding structure do they have? I mean, I think all that stuff would be very interesting to see and see how it plays into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But with birds kind of having this huge adaptive radiation where there are so many different types with so many different niches, I'm not that surprised to hear that they're kind of overlapping and growing and pulsing and cooperating, but it's still really cool to hear.
Birds of not really a feather flock together.
Yeah.
And help each other.
Birds of birds flock together.
Yeah. Well, it's neat to see somebody cooperating and getting along in this world. It's good. There's cooperation. It's possible. We don't always have to struggle against each other.
No.
There's hope. And you know what? There's hope for a second half of this show as well. We are going to take a break. We have a few messages for you. But when we come back, we have a lot more science news. We've got some great stories about regret, about stress. Sounds fun, doesn't it? We'll have more science for you when we return. This is This Week in Science. Stay tuned.
Can't explain things you've heard more than intuition. A line reason shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. The answers lie somewhere within this scattered plot. First assumptions were correct. Please prove the rest. It's hot. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need.
Sometimes I have to do a sing-along. Hey, everybody. This is This Week in Science. We are so glad that you are joining us again. Or if this is your first time, welcome. I hope that you're enjoying the show. Thank you for spending time with us. I'm Dr. Kiki, and I have a few things I would love to tell you about. Like, really, other than watching, you know what else you can do to help this show out and keep us going? Make sure that we can come back week after week after week. That's right. You can subscribe. It's so easy. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Easy thing to do. Go to twis.org, TWIS.org. There's a big orange subscribe button. Click on that and it will take you, show you links to go to YouTube to subscribe, iTunes to subscribe, or to the Google Play podcast portal. That's right, to subscribe, and you will get the show, get notifications. You'll get the show downloaded to your device every week on schedule. Wouldn't that be pretty awesome? It's pretty great. And if you know somebody who might enjoy the show and might enjoy subscribing, send them this direction. Show them how easy it is. Say, look, it's a subscribe button. Click it and subscribe. And that's great. And then you've gotten your friends to subscribe to TWIS. And then we are all here happily sciencing together. In addition to subscribing, once you're enjoying the show, maybe you'd like to have a little bit of This Week in Science merchandise, stuff that has the TWIS logo on it or other fun things that we'd like to put out there. We have t-shirts and mugs and mouse pads and polo shirts and tote bags and hats and cell phone covers and baby onesies and wrapping paper. So many cool things in our Zazzle store. So at twis.org, you click on the Zazzle store link at the top of the page. It'll take you to our Zazzle store, and you'll be able to find all sorts of wonderful items that have the TWIS logo on them, or in the case of things like the lumbar pillows or some of the baby onesies and t-shirts, there's original artwork from the images are original artwork of Blair's from past Blair's Animal Corner calendars, and a portion of all proceeds goes to support TWIS. And so your purchases, not only in having those items and being able to show them off and people going, what's TWIS? And then you can tell them about them and point them to that subscribe button. You know, it's a whole path kind of thing. Or people go, you like TWIS? I like TWIS. And then you have a bonding moment. Stuff like that is great. But in addition, you actually are helping to keep this show going. Other ways that you can help to support this show and keep us afloat financially are to just directly donate to TWIS. So you can support us through PayPal. Click on the yellow donate button that's on the sidebar of our twis.org main page. Big yellow button there. PayPal interface, nice and easy. Or you can go to any of the recent episodes. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there are some pink buttons at the bottom of every episode show page. And you can choose those buttons to donate in a recurring fashion, month after month after month, so that you don't have to remember to come back every month if you wanted to. You can just set it up in an ongoing fashion, which is pretty neat. Another way you can do that is to join our Patreon community. So in our Patreon community, you can click to become a patron at the level that you are most comfortable with. So we've got $1 a month support. We've got $10 a month support. That's about $2 per episode, because we do between 4 to 5 episodes every month. So it's about $2 per episode. That's a cup of coffee-ish every week, which is pretty awesome. So if you can do $10 a month, you'll get a whole bunch of nice items, and we'll say your name in our thanks at the end of the show. There are other levels of support as well with different rewards, and they go all the way up to $1,000 a month. Come on, who's going to do that one? Who's going to join us at $1,000 a month on Patreon? That would be amazing. But this is how we keep ourselves afloat. We are listener supported. We do the show because we love it and because we love to get to talk with you about science, and you help us keep doing this week after week, month after month, giving you science episodes, science podcasts, videos, all sorts of fun stuff in an ongoing way. And, really, it is because of you that we are able to do this. So thank you for your support. We could not do this without you.
Can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A lot of reason shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. The answers lie somewhere within this sky.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
Yes, we are. And oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's time for one of our favorite segments of the show. It's time for This Week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately? Oh, yeah, the chorus gets better every week. This letter is from Aidan Jeffes. I do not know if I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, if there's supposed to be a Jeffes. Hefes? I am sorry if I am not pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you for writing, even though I am bad at pronouncing this. Aidan writes in to say, hey, I've been listening to your show for years, and I've decided to send in a What Has Science Done For Me Lately? In 2015, my mom was diagnosed with very late stage 3 ovarian cancer, and the various scans she had made the surgery relatively safe, and the following PET scans allowed close monitoring of future growths. As well as this, advances in chemotherapy and blood tests have allowed my mother's medical oncologist to keep a close eye and tailor her treatment depending how her body reacts. Thank you to advances in medical science.
Yay.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And, the things that that are mentioned going into this, I mean, PET scans, these are the radiology technology that advances, the chemotherapy advances, the fact that we're getting into more personalized methods like that. I mean, it's really cool, and it allows people to spend more time with their loved ones, and hopefully you get to spend a lot more time with your mom. Thank you for writing in, Aidan. I do appreciate letters like this. Every week, something different. It's always wonderful to hear what your thoughts are on this. All of you out there, what has science done for you lately? Let's keep this segment going. Let's roll with this. If you've already written in and you know somebody who has a good idea and has not, give them a poke. Tell them to write. They can send me an email at Kirsten, Kirsten, at thisweekinscience.com, or leave us a Facebook message. That's right. Go to our Facebook page, This Week in Science. Leave us a message. And, if there are all sorts of ways. You can tweet. You can send me a tweet, a direct message. I don't know. Send us your messages, because this part of the show is from you to everyone else. And so this is how we share with our with each other how important science is to ourselves and our world.
If you don't send it in, you might one day regret it.
Yeah, Justin's gonna come
I don't want
break your kneecaps or something.
No, not I mean, like, that wasn't a threat.
You're gonna regret it.
He's making a segue into his story.
Regrets. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. But here's a few of them. There's a lot of things you can regret. You can have the forsaken dreams, romantic interests pursued or not, that home you should have purchased before the market took off, that singing career you were truly born for, but never made it out of the commuter studio. or the shower. Our most enduring regrets, it turns out, perhaps, are the ones that stem from our failure to live up to our ideal selves, according to new research from Cornell University. This is psychologist Tom Gilovich, former Cornell graduate student, Shai Davidai. They have found people are haunted more by regrets about failing to fulfill their hopes, goals, and aspirations than they are by regrets about failing to fulfill their duties, obligations, and responsibilities. The research, titled The Ideal Road Not Taken, was published in the journal Emotion. It builds on the idea that there are three elements that make up a person's sense of self: the actual self, the ideal self, and the ought selves. The actual self is made up of the attributes a person believes they possess, which is also sort of interesting if you think about it. Our actual self is just the self we think we are, not necessarily the one we actually are. That might be a different self that somebody else would have to tell us. But then who are they to tell us who we are? Anyway, the actual self is the one who we think we are. The ideal self encompasses the attributes we would ideally like to possess, the skills we wish we had, the hopes, goals, aspirations, wishes, dreams, and things that we wish we were doing or had done or were on the way to accomplishing. And then there is this not self, or ought, not self, sorry, the ought self, the person they feel they should be based on their duties, obligations, responsibilities. That's the self that, well, this is the job I have. This is the family I need to support. This is the thing I need to, this is what I should be doing. So Gilovich and Davidai surveyed hundreds of participants through the course of 6 studies, describing the differences between ought and ideal selves and asking people to list and categorize their regrets based on these descriptions. Participants said they experienced regrets about their ideal self 72% more often than their actual, well, not actual, but ought self, that responsible person, the person in society who has all these obligations and these things they need to do. And so sort of an interesting thing. Why do ideal self failures spark the enduring regret? While the expectations of the ought self are usually more concrete, involve specific things such as how to behave in society, and are easier to fulfill, we kind of let them go, I guess, if we don't live up to that day-to-day grind self responsibilities. But those things that we wished we had done, like write in a "What has science done for me lately?" or become a Patreon to This Week in Science, at some point, our ideal self would do these things. And this is what we will regret if we go forward without. Research has practical implications, says Gilovich. First, we often assume that we need inspiration before we can strive to achieve a goal. But a significant amount of psychological research shows that this is not true. And he goes right to the Nike slogan: just do it. Don't wait around for inspiration. Just plunge in. Waiting around for inspiration is an excuse, like a delay tactic or something. Inspiration arises from engaging in the activity that you are maybe not going after. Says all too often, people fail to achieve their ideal goals because they're worried about how it will look to others if they go out on these limbs and try for these big moonshot goals. For example, a person might want to learn how to sing, but feel they could never let others hear how bad they are. Again, Gilovich says, just do it. People are more charitable than we think, and also don't notice us nearly as much as we think they do. If that's what's holding you back, the fact that for a moment somebody might notice you, right? They probably won't. If you think they will be critical, they probably won't be very critical.
They're worried about their own regrets. They're not worried about yours.
Right. They've got their own whole baggage that they're carrying around with them. But fear of what other people will think and notice is what often holds people back. Think a little bit more, he says, about just doing it. Just go for it. Get out there. Put yourself out there. Try these things.
Just do it.
Follow your dream.
It follows along. I was just reading something earlier today from a writer's website, and there were some words from Tina Fey, the great SNL writer and comedienne. She says, it's a great lesson about not being too precious about your writing. You have to try your hardest to be at the top of your game and improve every joke you can until the last possible second. And then you have to let it go. You can't be that kid standing at the top of the water slide overthinking it. You have to let people see what you wrote. And that's
Right.
just do it. Don't be the kid standing at the top of the water slide.
Ira Glass has who does This American Life.
Yeah. He's got some great stuff.
A similar sort of speech to would-be creators on that, which is work really hard on it, put it out there, move on. Right? Go work on something else. Like don't go back, don't go over it, don't listen, don't read it, don't care. Just make it, put it out, go on to another thing.
Well, because I heard him actually talk about recently listened to his very first radio show again, and he hadn't heard it since then, and he said it was terrible, but he can't get too upset about it because he learned things, and as long as he continues to get better, it doesn't really matter what you did at the beginning because you're growing. Right?
It's all part of the path. But if you don't ever set foot on that path, you'll regret it.
I think it's also really important. This just kind of reeks of kind of like work-life balance to me, because the regrets that people don't actually care about that much are the ones related to boring stuff. Saving money, working harder, cleaning more, whatever it is. And the regrets that really matter to people are things that are enriching to your life. Having hobbies, trying new things.
Cleaning more was one of the...
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, you were talking about kind of household obligations and things like that. So you might say, oh man, I really should have done the laundry yesterday. But then your brain kind of moves on. You're like, oh, I'll just turn that underwear inside out. It's fine. But not doing the enriching stuff. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, but I do love this
idea of a little bit of a line from Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker is trying to convince Han Solo that they need to go save the princess, and he finally realized, I know what'll trigger him. He goes, she's rich. How rich? Really rich. If you rescue her, there'll be a reward bigger than you can imagine. And Han's like, I don't know. I got a pretty good imagination. Something along these lines, right? But like, so there can be a downfall with this. Like, following this advice of your ideal self, you may have shot too high. It's entirely possible. Entirely possible. Your ideal self is just somebody who nobody could be, let alone you. So, but the point is, in pursuing that, you might reach a lot of these ideal milestones and markers along the way. And you're right. A lot of this workday stuff does kind of indicate too that maybe if we're not our ideal self, or not pursuing the thing that we was an original passion and got sidetracked by responsibilities and did the right thing in those scenarios, maybe you would be happier, or would have been more towards your ideal, having pursued things a little bit.
It depends. I think it really depends on the strength that various individuals put on the ought self. And so they're thinking about here, they're the actual self, the ideal self, and the ought. I ought to have done that, right? That's where the kind of regret comes in. And maybe it's people who get tied up with the ought, and that one has a bigger influence on them. Those people maybe have more problems with depression and anxiety. I ought to do this. I ought to do that. And if that is plays too big of a part, you're not actually focusing on who you actually are. And people who maybe are more content in their lives have the ought is like, oh yeah, I ought to, but I didn't. I did this. I did some cool stuff. Now I'd like to be that ideal thing, but okay, we'll get there. We'll see what we can do, but it's not the weight. The weighting is maybe weighting as in WEIGHT. Weighting of them is possibly different. And I think that might be a big, where the study might be most important is in actually figuring out how to work with people psychologically to get them into a better mental health state.
Possibly. But the other part of it is like, parents put a lot of weight on the OT, I think, because OT is also being responsible. OT means when you
That's
leave
making
my
a
home,
functional adult. Yeah.
right, you're going to be, just go be in, get yourself a nice middle management job and you'll be able to pay your bills and everything will be fine. And you won't need to come do your laundry at home anymore. But there's probably a level of our society runs on all of these ought to do's being done in the responsible society. And maybe the parents had their ideal thing and maybe they tried it. Maybe they wanted to do that thing that was their dream. And instead it just didn't pay off. And so they had an ought that wasn't even as decent ought. It was like a lousy ought that they had to struggle with for a long time. And now they want you to have a really good ought. They just want you to shoot a little higher, not all the way to those dreams. It's just a little.
Yeah, my dad was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing going into this science thing? Man, you should just be a lawyer. You should be a doctor." No. Okay. Yeah, no. But what we ought to do and who we are, sometimes this creates a lot of stress in our lives, right? Stress.
And how?
Oh, absolutely.
And how, and we know that stress can affect ourselves personally, but there is now evidence that life stress can affect our offspring as well through the sperm.
Man, stressed out sperm.
Wait, what?
Yeah, past stress passed down the ancestral lineage through sperm. Previous studies, and we reported on them, have taken microRNAs. These are little bits of RNA that help to kind of tell which genes to turn on and turn off and help modulate genetic activity and the production of proteins within the cells. And so microRNA in sperm gets packaged up. It's in the sperm, it's packaged up in there, and it is a representative sample of the state of that individual, of the male at that point in time, and their history as well. And so there have been experiments that have taken these microRNAs and just a bunch of them, not knowing which ones worked, but kind of ones they've seen related to stress, and in mice, and injected them and seen stress profiles in offspring as a result of these microRNAs. Well, this new study that just was published in Translational Psychiatry, researchers at Tufts University School of Medicine have now in mice, and they've also correlated this in humans as well. They have determined that there are two specific microRNA in sperm expressed as a result of environmental factors, the effects of stress. They confirmed the amount of stress in human male volunteers using a very specific test called the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACE questionnaire. And this is an indicator of early life trauma, where there's a series of questions relating to family members, and 4 or more yes answers on this test ends up putting people at a risk, an increased risk for future mental and physical health problems. And on this study they did, the men in their study with the most extensive early abuse, or the highest ACE scores, had as much as a 300 times reduction in these 2 sperm microRNAs compared to men with very little abuse. They saw these same 2 microRNAs go down in mice that were put through early life stress as well. These microRNAs are called microRNA 449 and 34, MIR 449 and MIR 34. So they show that in humans and in mice, early life stress reduces these microRNAs. They know that these 2 sets of microRNAs are involved in development of the brain and the sperm in mice. They've shown in humans that MIR 34, or one related to it, has been implicated in promoting early embryonic development. And they've also showed that mouse studies where they transferred these microRNA levels to the next generation, when those embryos matured, the microRNAs were also reduced in the male offspring of their offspring. And it was even passed on through female offspring to male offspring. And it was transmitted 3 generations down the line.
Right.
And so this is microRNA in the sperm it's reduced in the individual as a result of the life stress. That reduction is therefore present in the sperm as well and gets transmitted down the line to the offspring.
So this we've seen before, not identified to the microRNA, but this is echoing parallels to the Norwegian farm famine, feast and famine, epigenetic.
But
so
nobody's
early
nobody's been able
1800s.
to explain why that happened or how.
Right,
and
but
this is a mechanism, maybe.
Right, this is the mechanism, because this is it was the same sort of thing. It was prepubescent in the sperm forming maturization stages of these youths, whether they were in feast and famine. Now, if the famine happened when they were 20, it didn't affect their future generations. But if they were in that sort of pre-puberty situation, then it did, and it would affect the next generation. And it was like, I think it was an even bigger effect that they saw on the grandchildren, what their life expectancy was. And it was, was not, as I recall, it was not what you would expect. If you had been in the feast time, prepubescent, your offspring had a shorter life than if you had the stress of famine in the early stages. And I don't know if there was like increased diabetes or something like this was also associated with it. I think with maybe the feast times, but it's almost like these little microRNAs. Well, now that I'm adding this into the story, but the epigenetic effect was if a sort of preparing the future generations for a lower caloric existence and being able to right.
And for their physiology to be responsive to that.
Yes. So very interesting though, now that they've got it marked down again to microRNAs, which was also, I think, what was in this was also involved in the transfer of the memory not memory in the
that we were talking about last week. Yeah.
Slug.
Yep.
Last week. So
microRNAs. They're involved in a whole lot of stuff, and we used to think that they were just junk. What's this junk floating around the cells? Oh, it's the command and control system. These are
it's just like we're gonna find out our appendix is really important someday. It's all that stuff we think is junk. It's up to something.
Yeah, these are the junk programs, the demon programs that go around and actually tell the code what to do. So, but the researchers point out they have a long way to go yet in really tying this down in humans, because there were, of course, limitations to this self-reporting in the ACE survey. And so there's also there's an issue for finding an unbiased marker for early trauma, like specific sperm microRNA content that could complement ACE surveys in the clinical setting. But this is really the first step or another step in the line, and a longitudinal study would really be something that would be amazing to be able to determine or explore how these microRNAs are involved in development of offspring, and also in their psychological health as they develop and grow, and what it means. What does it all mean? But this is potentially that epigenetic mechanism that we've been wanting to find out about for a long time. Oh. What else do you have, Justin?
Oh, okay. So Italians, they like olive oil.
Do you like olive oil?
I do. Actually, I have several types of olive oil in my kitchen. For somebody who doesn't cook very often, that's actually pretty impressive. And Italians been using olive oil for thousands of years. they just found a vessel with what do you call it? Like a vessel, made out of clay, where oldie times people kept stuff. That has traces that look like they are olive oil. Only it's 700 years older than olive oil was known to have been used, and it's not in Italy. It's in Sicily. Sicily is the origin now of olive oil use in the ancient world.
Isn't Sicily's not Italy?
No. Two completely different. They're separated by water. They're totally different places.
I gotta look at a map. Okay.
I know. I'm looking right now.
I got everybody checking out.
I'm like, wait a minute, geography.
Well, now if you are,
it is an island in the Mediterranean Sea off of the tip of Italy's boot.
Yes. And it's been treated that way ever since. So it's very important.
It is an Italian region.
I thought it's like you're a Sicilian. You're Italian. You're like a Sicilian Italian.
It's a part of Italy. It's just not on the mainland of Italy.
Right.
If you're Italian, you're Italian. If you're Sicilian, you're Sicilian.
It is an autonomous region of Italy.
Autonomous.
It is in Italy.
Well, it's sort of like saying.
But anyway,
British
moving on.
Instead of Irish or Scottish.
The olive oil origin on the mainland. It was on the island, so it had to have crossed part of the Mediterranean Sea to enter the culture in mainland Italy. Is the idea?
The origin. I just want to, if I didn't say it yet, the origin of olive oil is not Italian. It's Sicilian.
Okay, so what year is this, Justin?
So I don't know. So
Justin, isn't your family your origins of your family from Sicily? Is this why you're?
Could be. So it's about 4,000 years old.
Okay, I was gonna say I saw a 3,000-year-old olive oil press in Israel when I was there, so I was interested to hear.
So much older.
Yes, a whole 1,000 years. Yes.
That's it. And also, if you've got a picture, if you can find a picture of it, the storage jar, it's like my favorite part of this.
Yes, I have a picture of the storage jar, and I will show it right now.
With an interesting design sort of around it. It's almost looks like they put a fishing net into the design.
Very cool.
Yeah.
They took time. They took time to make a nice jar to press their oil and put it in. All right, not Italian oil.
Yeah.
Not Italian olive oil. This is an interesting debate. Certainly. Sicilian oil. And I think the big thing is that this is an even older instance of olive oil. So than the last instance. So it's
by 700 years. I mean, that's quite a pushback.
Years. Yes. Yeah. Pushing it back. Olive oil. Pushing it out. There we go. The cyborgs are coming, Blair.
No!
Yeah. The robots with the muscles.
Unless you can download my brain in. That's the only way I do it.
Is that all it takes? Is that all it takes, Blair, for you to switch sides? Is to have your brain live
forever? Yeah.
That's right. Okay. New study reported in Science Robotics out of the University of Tokyo Institute of Industrial Science has jumped over a hurdle in integrating living muscles into robot machines. So they have developed a new method that has moved forward from individual muscle precursor cells to muscle cell-filled sheets and fully functioning skeletal muscle tissues. They're not big, mind you. These are little tiny guys, but They have been able to take fully functioning skeletal muscle tissues and incorporate the muscles into a biohybrid robot in the same way that the muscles in our bodies work in antagonistic pairs, with one muscle pulling in either direction to be able to do work together to move a lever of sorts. The researchers first made the robot skeleton, which is a little tiny thing, which has a rotatable joint, anchors where the muscles could attach, and electrodes to provide the stimulus for contraction. And instead of extracting a muscle from a body, they actually just built their own. They made skeletal muscle. They used hydrogel sheets with muscle precursor cells and holes to attach the sheets to the robot skeleton anchors. And then they encouraged the muscles to form in an aligned manner. And they kind of gave them these little muscle cells stimulation and gave them opposing forces. And the researchers say the fact that they were exerting opposing forces on each other stopped them shrinking and deteriorating like in previous studies. And so it worked. Our findings show that using this antagonistic arrangement of muscles, those robots can mimic the actions of a human finger. First came the finger.
Uh-oh. Yikes!
Yeah, and I've got a video that I would love to share with you all of this little muscle doing its work, these muscles moving back and forth. They're small now, but eventually these muscles will grow. I mean, give them some spinach. Be like Popeye doing work, picking things up, moving them around. You won't need to have a trick pony. You'll have a trick robot.
Yeah, this makes me real uncomfortable.
So this robot in this video, they've got these muscles on either side that pull a lever around across a rotating joint to one direction or the other based on which muscle of the antagonistic pair is contracting. The robot's able to work together with another robot to be able to lift things. The robot is able to, like a finger, grab things and pick them up and hold them. And so the sky's the limit. Can you imagine Big Dog or any of those the robots, if we could get these biohybrids, these muscles big enough? Right now, the muscles are very small. We're looking at very tiny things, but who's to say? Maybe they'll figure out the forces necessary to grow these skeletal muscles into much larger configurations.
Blade Runner's coming.
That's right. That's right. Robo Finger. First came Robo Finger. Oh, and Justin, this is my last story for the night. And I really wanted to share this story with you because I can't wait to hear your reaction. I cannot wait to hear your reaction to this story. A study in Scandinavia, researchers did some undercover science, investigative science. They sent a bunch of it was researcher volunteers who went to car dealerships to try and buy cars and recorded what the car salesman tried to sell to them and what they said. Because one of the big questions these days is, hey, electric vehicles, they're not dead, but they're not doing great. Why aren't they being sold in larger numbers? And according to this study, it's not the cars themselves, it's the sales staff who are putting people off, at least in Scandinavia. Some of the quotes from the study were, "Do not buy this. It will ruin you."
Oh, that seems extreme.
Another would-be customer was gently steered away from an electric model because the salesperson wrongly insisted it would take 2 days to drive 350 kilometers, the distance between New York City and Washington, D.C.
Oh, yikes. Yikes.
So the question is, why are the car salesmen so petroleum oriented? These salesmen were very against the electric cars, really wanted to steer the buyers toward petroleum-based vehicles, and it may be just habit or not understanding the electric vehicles. Maybe they haven't been, or there's no incentive. But
right, that's going to be
yeah.
it. So the profit is for the salespeople is not really that good for an electric car, and part of the reason is electric cars are more expensive. The research and development, the companies have put out, these are new technology vehicles that have, you know, what the push from a lot of automakers is to get electric cars out there. They want to build them. They want to get the people driving them. Part of the thing that they do to get it so that people will drive these cars is they have narrower margins. They're not, you know, there's a massive inflation on a gas guzzling SUV because nobody really needs it. You have to really want to drive that thing. Otherwise, just get a minivan, right? There's like an SUV surcharge for driving that. So you don't want to drive a minivan, fine. For your own for your own self-image, spend another $3,000. There you go. There's all the profit in the world. You own the car salesperson gets a commission on that. They're happy. Electric cars are also often sort of incentivized a bit by government and that sort of thing to help create the lure. Or to lure people in. So there might be rebates, there might be being able to use the diamond lane, there might be all these other sort of incentives that are out there along with the skinny margin, and there's not really anything in it for the salesperson who could redirect them to something which they would personally profit from. So yeah, I would blame the salespeople for redirecting from incentives, although what you say is true as well. Familiarity.
Yeah.
You know, that new technology might be harder for the salespeople to comprehend. They may not be very well trained on it. They may not believe in it themselves. You know, the fact that it's in Scandinavia is a little weird because
right, I would think they're more forward thinking about saving the planet.
And
right?
A lot of Scandinavia isn't really that like spread out. Like, you know,
and I could imagine the salespeople being, "Don't buy a car, get a bicycle. It's Scandinavia."
Right.
Yeah, there's still car salespeople.
I know. I'm kidding.
But yeah, so that's.
I think you're right, though. I think it depends. I mean, if I was going to go buy an electric car, which I hope to eventually, I'm going to ask a lot of questions about what kind of ports do I need? Can I charge this at home? What voltage does it need? How long does it take to charge? So I think, Justin, you're definitely onto something there, is that there's a lot of follow-up questions related to normal cars that car sales people probably got right off the top of the dome. But when you're asking questions about electric cars, even if you just say, "I don't know," a few times, that might steer somebody away because of the fear of the unknown.
So there's that. Now, there is another answer to this, though. They may be being directed to steer people away by the dealership.
Yeah. True.
Because the thing that the electric cars don't need, they don't need the valve adjustments. They don't need the oil changes. When you come in for the oil changes and your oil filter change and this thing and that fluid and the other fluid, well, they also find, hey, you also need to do this, that, and the other. We could also replace the transmission, which also the electric car doesn't have. So there's a lot of loss potential to the service side of car dealerships if the electric car takes.
I was wondering too that if there's some sort of weird metric that they know that we don't, that says that if you buy an electric car, you have it for longer, or you're less likely to trade in, or whatever. We don't know, right? So there could be these other metrics, and it hasn't been long enough. So it is kind of the fear of the unknown there, also.
Yeah. So there is a little of that because there's a lot of people who come in again for those oil changes who then decide to trade in and, you know, buy a car. Yeah. So there's a bit of that. And it could also just be, depending on the brand that we're talking about, a lack of faith in their product. So not all electric cars are the same. They've made great strides in the last couple of years. But, you know, having a 60-mile range, which a lot of the electric cars had up until recently. We're not talking Teslas here. We're talking, you know, a 60-mile range on a little electric car is like, yeah, you know what? I've
limiting.
had a few complaints. And it's 60 unless you run the air conditioner, and then it's 35. And then and you just told me your commute is 30 miles. This might not be the right car. So there is that. And there's anxiety from the salespeople, there's anxiety from the salespeople, from the customers. But we're getting to a point where those ranges are getting further out. I think even there's 150 to 200 and something miles. There's electric hybrid combinations that'll take you 400 plus miles. So there's a lot of different technology that's there and coming. So it's hard to say, but yeah, I've seen it myself. But being, when I was a car salesperson, and it's so awesome to say when I was a car salesperson, I would see that in some of the other salespeople that they, would steer away from even hybrids, in talking about that technology. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of factors involved. So thank you for clearing that up for me. I just thought the undercover shopping though, and the quotes from this study were kind of funny. Don't buy this one; it will ruin you.
It will ruin you.
I love how everybody who goes to a car dealership does it undercover too. Like you can't just it's not.
Hey.
You're not behind enemy lines, literally. You're just shopping. You can just say, I went shopping, and here's what I found. You don't have to be undercover. I don't know why.
My name is Dolores. I'm a school teacher.
My hobbies include. You don't have to. Just stop.
This is my husband, shopping. Gerald. We have 3 children at home and a Dalmatian.
I didn't want a Dalmatian, but you have one now. So.
Perfect. Hey, can you guys walk and chew gum?
I hope so.
Right? It's as easy as walking and chewing gum. It's the saying, right? Yeah. So if you can, according to a new study out of Japan, if you want to lose weight, maybe go walking and chew gum. It looks like people's heart rates went up, their caloric burn, all the values that would be involved in that, increased when chewing gum and walking. I mean, maybe there's like some nervousness about biting your tongue or tripping. I don't know, but it was a bit more increased also in middle-aged men. Not so much of an effect on the younger population that they looked at, but hey, if you want to get a little bit of an edge, chew that gum. That's it.
My dentist wouldn't like that very much.
Actually, 4 out of 5 dentists would approve. So maybe you just got the oddball.
It's my jaw. My jaw doesn't like it.
All right, Blair, tell me a couple of stories, and then it's time for us to close it up.
Yeah. Speaking of jaw muscles and other uniquely human muscles that you might find on my body, muscles once uniquely human have been discovered in several ape species. Shock and horror. So the long-held theory on...
Wait, we're related to the apes?
Yeah. Yeah, long-held theories on the origin and evolution of human soft tissues have been rocked this week, finding that certain muscles that previously they thought evolved for the sole purpose of providing special adaptations for human traits, including walking on 2 legs, using tools, vocal communication, and facial expressions. Oh, wait, hold on. Those are all things that we've now seen in apes. We have now also found that every one of these muscles has been found to be present in the same or similar form in bonobos and other apes like chimpanzees and gorillas. So, whoops. This was a compilation of previous information on ape anatomy. This was a bunch of different studies, and then preserved specimens, and then recently deceased examined in apes, and they found all this kind of stuff. So there we go. Not so special.
Oh.
Yeah. But last, I have a really cool story about what stick bugs and strawberries have in common. They might both depend on birds to distribute their babies. So a team of Japanese researchers found that walking sticks, their eggs are really hardy. They're really hard, they're really thick, and they seem to be somewhat resistant to being dissolved in different things. And so they wanted to test the hypothesis that potentially if these eggs are eaten, they might come out still fertile and alive.
Aha.
Yes, and they found that in fact the eggs are strong enough to pass through the digestive tract unharmed, and they actually, because the eggs are fertilized by sperm stored in a vesicle in the female, and the fact that females are often parthenogenic, that means that potentially a female stick insect could get eaten and the eggs inside her body could pass through the body of a bird and still have fertile babies inside. Yes. So they were able to find that between 5 and 20% of eggs in this species or in this study did come through unharmed, and one in particular actually hatched. So it's not a huge percentile, but it's possible. So adult female stick insects are in fact always filled with eggs, and since they can reproduce via parthenogenesis, this could happen at any time. So in theory, either on purpose or accidentally, stick insects could be using birds as seed dispersers, just like fruit.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that means they could potentially spread over quite a large area.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Bugs might not be able to get to.
Is that these stick bugs are very slow moving. They're not very good at traversing large areas, and they depend on camouflage, so they move not often. They spend a lot of time just totally stock still. So knowing all that, how do they expand their reach? How do they propagate? And so this is a potential theory.
What a fascinating strategy, right? And something happened once a long time ago. Instead of laying the eggs externally, individuals started keeping them internally, and then that benefited the population. And the ones that held the eggs internally for longer were the ones that survived because their eggs survived.
But just, the idea that a female stick insect could get picked off and eaten, and that the poop of that bird would have fertile eggs in it that would later hatch is just...
Yep. Yeah. Eat a bug, poop out its eggs. There you go.
What?
This is... It's not such a strange strategy, though. I mean, lots of parasites use this strategy, don't they?
Absolutely.
We talk about pinworms or hookworms, or there's all sorts of parasites that use being eaten and the mammalian digestive tract as a mode of dispersal. This is not new, but fascinating idea.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Humans have it relatively easy.
But I say that as a male. Let's just first respond to that fact. Okay. Human females carry their babies for a pretty long time. They get pretty darn big.
Okay, but you don't have to get eaten by a dinosaur and then have your offspring.
No.
Come
but
from
there are other species. There are other mammalian species that I think the birthing process might be a little less intense, let's say.
Yeah. Well, other relatives of humans, there was news this last week that bonobos, that females that are pregnant get help from their friends, similar to what we've been talking. Yeah.
Precious bonobos.
Get a little help from the friends if you're pregnant.
Bonobo lives. Yeah. Bonobos, they just love each other and help each other out. They're great. They're the best version of ourselves.
They are.
Yes. They are our ought self, the bonobos.
That would be the idea.
Oh my God.
That's working all the time. And taking care of the day-to-day things.
Bonobos take care of each other.
Bonobos are like, bonobos are the ideals. The chimpanzees are kind of the actual. No.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh dear. But it is time for us to reflect and hopefully have no regrets and to move to the end of this show because we have finished our show yet again. We've come to the end. We've covered all the stories that we brought. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another show. Love that you were here, and I hope that you enjoyed the whole show. Right now, it's time to give shout outs to everyone out there. I would love to say thank you to the people who help Twist Out Identity 4. Thank you for recording the show every week. Brandon, thank you for simulcasting us to Facebook. You also give me a reason to use the word simulcast, which is pretty awesome. Fada, thank you for your help on social media and for doing the YouTube notes. I know you're getting up early in the morning on Thursdays to get that done. So much amazing help, and you help out. You've been helping out in the YouTube chat room. Thank you for that. All of you in the chat rooms, thank you for chatting during the show. Thank you for being a part of the show and enjoying it with us. For those of you at home, we hope that you laughed and cried and shouted at us in your cars or your homes or wherever you are. I'd also like to say thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, G. Burton Lattimore, Richard Onimus, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prather, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Andy Groh, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Ed Dyer, Craig Landon, John Ratnaswamy, Mark Mazzaros, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K., Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Kyle Washington, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condren, Aidan Jeffes, and I don't know if I'm saying your last name right, Christoph Zuknierek, and I'll work on that one. I'm sorry. Noah Zemke. We got some new names. This is great. Jim Seabright, Ashish Pants, Jacqueline Boyster, Ulysses Adkins, Sean Bryant, Sarah Chavis, Richard Porter, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazewski, Jim DePoge, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Lesseman, Kurt Larson, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie Gary S., Robert Bet, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessen, Flo, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, EO, Mark, Tyrone Fong, and Keith Corsell. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And for those of you who are interested in learning more, you can head over to twis.org or to patreon.com/thisweekinscience. And remember that you can be a part of sharing Twists just by telling your friends about us and our website. On next week's show, oh my goodness, it's June already. We'll be back in June. On next week's show, Wednesday, we'll be broadcasting online, 8 p.m. Pacific time. As we usually do, you can watch online at YouTube at twist.org/YouTube. You can also join us at twist.org/live or at facebook.com/thisweekinscience.
Thank you for enjoying the show. Twist is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device, you can look for Twist, the number 4 Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twist.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put Twist, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at Twist Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science.
This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And we have come to the end of another show. Blair, your hair. What is going on over there?
What do you mean?
What do I mean? I don't know. All of a sudden, your hair right now, it reminds me of one of the Japanese Harajuku girls, like they wear the romantics, the romantic dresses.
What is that here?
What's
Going
on? You
now
get
I'm
fancy.
like a rocker chick.
There you go. Rocket.
Asymmetry all the way.
That's awesome. There you go. I like it. Oh my gosh. Yes. Good.
Yep. This is my new thing. I'm going to shave this side of my head.
You should. Oh,
I've always wanted to do that. I'm going to do it someday.
You should do it. Like Karen.
Yeah.
Karen had great hair. That was awesome with her long hair, and then it was shaved underneath. It's fancy.
I love that.
It's the fancy rage right now. I think I would really get annoyed trying to grow it out, though, at some point. I have many friends who have done this hairstyle, growing it out. It's great. Lolita,
do it now on
thank
air,
you,
Noodles.
Blake. Lolita K. Lolita K. Yes. Noodles wants you to shave it right now.
Right now, on air.
Right now.
I will do it if someone donates at the $1,000 level on Patreon. How about that?
There you go. There you go. I think that's a good one. We'll see.
I mean, its hair grows back.
I know, Bleak. I was dancing below the desk. I just kind of slid down my chair.
It happens to the best of us.
Chair dancing. I melted. It's chair dancing. Well, that was a fun show. And I
That was a
did.
fun
Where's
show.
Justin? I need to tell him about the his disappearing Y chromosome.
His personally.
His personally disappearing Y chromosome.
So I really wanted to show you the really cool thing happening in my living room right now, but I'm afraid to touch any of it. So I'm just gonna have to describe it.
Is this 80s Blair?
It is
this
80s rocker
80s
Blair.
rock and roll Blair.
All right.
The largest Lego set ever is currently being put together in my home.
Awesome.
It's the Millennium Falcon.
Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's what he was working on. Nice.
Yeah. I think it's 7,000 pieces.
It's a lot of pieces.
Yeah, 7,500 pieces. Yes, it's the largest ever made. It's pretty neat.
That's
it doesn't
awesome.
really look. I mean, it's starting to look like the Falcon. So it's
Yeah,
got
they
the-
start out not looking like what they're gonna
and
look
it's
like,
got
and
the
then
one, pokey part in the front, just one.
yeah, I think it was Dave Friedel. He posted something on Facebook today, which was this really cool video of a wall, like the corner of a wall coming together. I guess my hands should go that way at the camera. So a wall coming together, and at the corner, it was as if the sheetrock was pulled away, and there were Legos making up that corner. And so it was like this
Ooh.
neat design of Legos through the torn out sheetrock. But then in that, you could open up little sections of the corner, and it was open inside, and there were these scenes like this. There was like this like jungle cave inside in one, and then another people were watching there was a bunch of Lego characters, and they were watching a performance, and so it was like these little worlds inside the wall.
That's brilliant.
Oh, it was great. It was super cool. Bleak says, "Yeah, that's an artist guy." Yeah, that is an artist guy.
That's really cool.
Sounds very neat. Very neat. Oh, Fada, you want a bonobo story? Earl, I do not have a story, Earl. I find a story, Earl. Bonobo y la bonita. Oh, Justin, your Y chromosome may be disappearing.
Yeah. Where'd it go?
Okay, here's that.
I thought I
Hold
left
on.
it with my keys in my wallet over on but I looked and it's not there. So I don't know where I
Nope.
put it.
There we go.
I already
There's
looked in the
bonobo.
refrigerator. That's not it.
Ooh, what does this story say? This story says a mystery ghost ape species found hidden in the bonobo's genome. We know about it because it mated and had offspring with bonobos, a chimp species roughly 400,000 years ago, and its genes persist. Oh, cool. It's kind of like Neanderthals in our DNA, except we've found evidence of the Neanderthals, or like the Denisovans, right? Yeah. But anyway, okay, enough about bonobos. Let's talk about Justin's chromosomes. So we've been talking about this for years, and it's not what I was thinking in the show. It's not the same kind of thing. What's actually happening is the Y chromosome is shedding genes and degenerating and disappearing. And according to research, if the rate of degeneration continues, the Y chromosome only has 4.6 million years left.
Okay. So
only
wait,
4.6.
hang on. That Okay.
That's longer than life has existed. Oh wait, no, never mind.
No,
Life
for
is
humans.
3.5 for
but,
humans. Yeah, it's longer than we've been around.
But like, can it ever pick up anything? Like, just always gonna be like that?
And so this is the
Are we
question.
streamlining? Is that what's happening?
So, according to science, the proto Y chromosome used to be the same size as the X chromosome, containing all the same genes. But the Y chromosomes, because they're only ever present as a single copy, they can't undergo genetic recombination, which X chromosomes can in females. And so there's no shuffling of genes to get rid of gene mutations or the degeneration. And so because there's no recombination, genes degenerate and are eventually lost over time.
You heard it, ladies. Men won't last forever. Get them while you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
that's the new way.
Well, that's the question. I mean, what's going to happen? How are we going if you don't have a chromosome that determines if there's no master switch determining the genetic maleness? I mean, would the master switch move to a different chromosome?
Or would it become temperature determined?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are other species where the Y chromosome has been lost.
I want to have a boy this time.
Yeah.
According to this article that I am looking at, there are other species that have lost their Y chromosome. Male voles have lost their Y chromosome. Voles, but they still have males.
Then how they do? How they make males?
So they've moved the master genetic determination switch moved to a different chromosome.
They don't know why.
Yeah, but then again, the new chromosome, once the master switches on it, there'll be, because it's males, then there'll be no recombination, and then that one will start degenerating. So what? But researchers aren't really sure whether it's going to degenerate at all, whether it's going to disappear at all.
Papa was a rolling chromosome.
Yeah. So even though this is happening, I mean, does this mean humanity, regardless of our stupidity and our incompetence at surviving on this planet, I mean, if we survive this, do we have like a kill switch? Is that it? Like you're done, no more reproduction for you. That's it. I mean, I would expect in 4.6 million years we'd have, gotten cloning and IVF.
Yeah, nobody will even have sex anymore.
Right. We'll be
It'll
uploaded.
all be like catalog decisions.
Yeah.
I want my child to be blonde, curly haired.
But it'll all be mice. The world will be run by mice. And
who's to say it's not already?
It is already. Yeah. Fascinating.
I don't know. I think the world could do with a few less men, though.
Probably.
Like a lot less.
Well, I mean, one could argue that in the past, there has been a mechanism for thinning out the men, and it was
called men.
It was war, right? This is what we were talking about before. But also there was a huge drop in the male population in the United States after the Civil War, for example, right? Mm-hmm. So there was definitely a pattern in a lot of organized society of this like pulse of aggression that created a drop in the male population. So maybe this is a result of
usually followed by a period of prosperity.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Not to put too grim a point on it. Girls haven't really been representing with the mass shootings.
Yeah, there is that.
I mean,
not that it couldn't happen, but just
I am just saying that
Yeah.
But this is that thing that could be that big compromise, right?
Yeah.
Is not a ban on guns in the United
Yeah.
States.
Just
a ban
only women.
on yeah, only women. Okay, so the women are making the argument of self-defense. Absolutely, let them have all the guns. It's all weapons, bazookas, whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so
Just take the guns away from the boys. That's
just
all.
take them away from the boys. Do
All
it.
that really needs to take place.
So Noodles is saying, put a t-shirt in the Zazzle shop. So there's a print shop that I was thinking might be fun for us to try for limited edition t-shirt runs.
Fun.
Yeah, I think it was called Everpress.
And can we get a t-shirt gun? One of those
Yes,
launchers?
t-shirt cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I think it's called Everpress is the press, and how it works is that it's kind of like a Kickstarter in that you put your design up and then you have a certain amount of time to get a certain number of orders. And if the orders happen, then the t-shirt gets made.
That's
There's
there's
certain-
another company that does that called Bonfire Fund.
Oh yeah? Okay, I'll look into them also. But I was thinking that might be kind of fun if we want to do that.
Oh, guys, I gotta go.
Okay.
I gotta go. So
Oh yeah, Bonfire Funds. Yeah, bonfire.com. That's the other one. I've
See
used
you
them
all
before.
You have?
next
They're
week.
good.
Yeah.
You gotta go just when we're
Gotta
talking
go.
about fun stuff. And for your email, I do believe that if you just go to the
Okay. Well,
address, if you go to the mail dot whatever address, that
I
will
don't know what
then
even that
come
would
to
be.
you. It's in the email.
I just put it in the
It's
chat
not.
box, Justin. Can you see
Uh-huh.
it?
What?
I just put it in the chat of the Google Hangout.
Oh, now I
Can
gotta.
everybody see it? I can
I
see
don't
it.
think so.
Oh.
I'll send him another.
Quite simpler.
Simple. Oui, oui. Father, good night. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, you can.
Okay,
And you
I think I'm there. Yep, I'm there.
And you can choose whichever of the 3 options you want. Horde is good. I use the round whatever. I might switch
I've had good success with the Horde.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about?
Oh boy.
Wait, what?
Uh-oh, Justin has a TWIS email address now.
Yeah. So I've got the TWIS email sorted, which is fabulous. Our websites have been migrated, which is fabulous. I believe the security is being put on the websites. I hope. I gotta check into that.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was doing some things. Website health. I've updated our got our website finally updated to a new server with a new operating system, and that can be updated to new security protocols. Yes is happy times. Migrated websites aren't taking your gerbs. They took our gerbs. Took our gerbs. Yeah, but yes. Okay, Justin, if you have to go.
Oh my gosh. Why is everything so crazy?
I
Now
don't
I'm gonna
know.
try this. I'm gonna see if this thing works.
What are you doing?
I'm
Are you
trying
going to try and send an
do the
email?
consent. Oh, it's redirecting me now.
Don't forget to put TWIS TWIS in the subject line.
Oh my gosh.
It gets spam filtered into oblivion.
Okay.
Pew, pew,
So
pew.
what are these options? Okay, I know the one that Blair didn't choose.
Huh?
What? I think Justin's confused.
It's got all. Oh my gosh. What is all of this?
Years of emails you didn't know you had, probably.
Insanity. No, it's not it. It's making me choose an application. I need a new application.
You should pick Horde or the round whatever.
Why not the
or
squirrel? What's wrong with the squirrel?
Nothing. It's the simplest. So it's like it has the least uh like bells and whistles. It's just the most basic email platform
What
or
would you
webmail.
want an email to do other than the
I don't know.
Some email platforms filter out your emails using AI. Hot Rod, I do not believe upper or lowercase matters. I believe as long as you put TWIS TWIS in the subject line in any combination of upper and
It's
lowercase
not a
letters,
password. Yeah, it's not a password. It's
you'll
not
be
case
fine.
sensitive.
Oh wait, that is my password though.
Justin, don't tell the internet your password.
I thought we were off the air.
Oh.
Okay, now I'm in this horrible configuration hell, and there's still no like place to look at an email.
Oh, Justin.
I'm so confused.
Oh my goodness. Bleak is
Protocols.
paid to do
Blah
web
blah blah
design.
over blah blah blah. Do you want blah 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 blah? Or do you want blah 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 blah? This is blah 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 blah. Oh my god. Stop.
Yikeroo.
This is nuts. And there's still no email. Like I can't.
Yes, I think maybe we should have a holiday. Maybe we should have a special internet holiday where it's like for this hour only, everyone shares all their passwords.
Yeah.
You know, instead of like let's turn off our lights for 8 hours.
I just got this email.
Oh, I got a bunch of text.
I already have unopened emails from. Oh, these are from 2013, and it's all spam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 2,000 emails. From what I can tell, they're all from Viagra.
Yeah, probably.
Which explains why. Oh, here's one. It's from a minion back in 2014. Oh dear Lord. Sorry, everybody.
You're like, look at all these emails I didn't see and respond to. Maybe you did respond to them because maybe back then you were still doing the other webmail.
2014? No.
Nope. I'd switched. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Did you guys hear about this thing? If you have a Wi-Fi router, you have to reboot it. The FBI says. The Russians are in your router. The Russians are in your router. Reboot your router.
Reboot your router from Russian. Say that 5 times fast.
Reboot your Russian router. I mean your router from Russians. No.
Oh my gosh. There's so much junk mail. I've never seen this much junk mail in one place.
No, my email goes back a really long time, and I think I have it's like 18,000 messages, and there's a lot of spam in there.
Yeah, I gotta go in and figure out how to.
You gotta clean that bunk out. All right, should we let you
filter
get to it?
Just a little bit. Watch it move. Filter it just a little bit. Sorry. Stop now.
I have to read all this junk mail.
You don't have to read all the junk mail.
Nobody took the time to send it to me.
Is somebody selling you Xanax on the internet?
I'm sure there's some in here.
Yeah.
Like everything is in here. Ladies' watches.
Ladies' watches, yes. Oh, your hair is totally different now.
My hair fell.
Oh.
Because I took my headphones off. My headphones was holding it up.
Oh, so Bleak is telling us just get a new router. Just get a new router. You're hosed. Don't have the Comcast router. That's not good. Yeah, power cycle reboot.
There, how's that? Oh no. It didn't work.
Looking good. There you go.
I need my filters. Where's my filters?
Modem. The modem, not the router. The modem. Power cycle. Reboot. Reboot clears out the malware virus. Got it.
Reboot.
I'll do it later. Hot Rod, you're good. You power cycled? Awesome.
Oh, here we go. Here's the filters.
Going to tunnel.
There you go. There, now I have bangs.
Oh, so now we have to trust the FBI because now our router fetches firmware provided by the FBI. So basically, we are in. I mean, it's going to happen eventually that I'm going to have to power cycle things. But basically, what we're doing is we're giving a backdoor to the FBI to snoop on us. Is that what we're doing? Ugh. Oh my goodness! It is the router. That's what I thought. Okay, I got confused by somebody else's answer there. The router. It was the router. I don't know if I'm going to do it. Now you look like you've got all this short hair, Blair. Suddenly, short hair, Blair.
Oh, wow.
She's got bangs.
Yeah. Little pixie cut.
That's funny. I'm sure my router is one of the affected ones because it's probably affected. That's just the way it works. Tech is technical. You're right. It's all
Mine is
technical.
really new. Mine is only like 3 months old.
Oh, do we get to talk about Elon Musk now?
What did he do?
He was a jerk on Twitter.
Oh no! What did he do? Who's he a jerk to?
Yeah, he was abrupt with people online, but I think there
I feel
are.
like he always is, right?
Yeah, but I'm kind of thinking maybe there are some angry people on Twitter that respond in an inflamed way when people say things a certain way. Yeah, so he said that I think the one of the main statements that he made, he said that nanotechnology is BS. That all nanotechnology is BS. And I understand where he's coming from a I guess a Silicon Valley perspective. There have been many companies and many devices that people, this is nanotechnology. This is going to improve our lives. This is going to do this, blah, blah, blah. But it's just small stuff and it's not changing. It hasn't been revolutionary. But people in the science community jumped all over him saying, I thought you liked science. What are you doing jumping on nanotechnology? And yeah, it was silly.
Okay, I gotta go. Bye.
You gotta go. Well, I was gonna say a real goodbye. Bye.
Say goodbye, Blair.
Goodbye, Blair. Say goodnight, Justin.
Good night, Justin. Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. It's 10:30. Do you know where your children are? It's time for bed. This is This Week in Science. Have a wonderful week. Lots of science to you. You oughter be happy we were here tonight. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you again next week. Good night.